Hi, this is Jim Rivas, and welcome to the CSA Research Summit. And our keynote is our CEO panel, Enabling Pervasive Zero Trust. And I know this is a very hot topic, and I'm thrilled to have not only some great experts, but they are CEOs of what you'd have to say are three of the most vital cybersecurity companies in the world right now. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of them and let them actually introduce themselves, even though I'm sure you know them. And also, if they just would like tell us one thing, maybe they're excited about the industry or particularly their company in 2022. So I'm going to start at that left side of the slide and ask George Kurtz first to introduce himself.
Hi, George Kurtz, CEO of CrowdStrike and co-founder. Been in security for longer than I'd like to admit, and I'm excited for the panel today. I'm also excited in 2022 with some of the XDR technology that we're coming to market with, and I think that's probably another buzzwordy term, kind of like zero trust, that we're hoping to redefine. And I think 2022 is going to be a great year, and it's great to be here again. Thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks, George. Jay Chaudhry, you're next.
Yes, I'm CEO, founder, and chairman of Zscaler. I started this company in 2008 with the notion that if applications move to the cloud, users become mobile. We won't be able to have the world where we are doing security with a castle and moat architecture using firewalls and VPN. So we built the key architecture for zero trust security. We are excited to see that the market is waking up to embrace zero trust, and we're helping our customers have better security.
All right, thank you very much, Jay. Todd McKinnon.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm from Okta. I'm the founder and CEO. I'm excited about a lot of stuff in 2022. If it's going to be a great year for the industry, and I think, as Jay said, a lot of companies are waking up to what the modern ways to do zero trust, what's possible, and how it can be easier for customers, and how it could have great not only security outcomes, but ease of use and frictionless experience, which I think is really important. Specifically, with what we're working on, we've kind of, the foundation of our product has been integration. So it's really comes out of the box, connected to everything in the industry, every piece of technology a customer wants to use. So that makes it really easy. You kind of tell Okta what you're using, and there's all these 7,000 plus out of the box integrations. So that integration network is getting broader and deeper all the time. Our ecosystem, or the partners and our customers, are contributing back to that. So I think that's getting better and better, and that's better for customers because out of the box, ease of deployment, quick time to value, better user experience, and like what we're all here about is better security. So the integration network is getting better.
+1 to all of that. Thanks a lot, Todd. So the topic that we are going to be getting into is zero trust, and to build sort of towards that conversation, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the attacks we're seeing today and maybe why existing security models aren't super effective. So maybe George, you could start off like at a high level, how are companies by and large getting attacked and compromised today that you're concerned about?
Well, it's a lot of what we've seen over the last 30 years, just a more sophisticated version of it. And it starts with things like poor passwords, user identity, masquerading as different users, whether it's regular users or whether it's admins, as well as obviously malware and non-malware attacks. And we just put out a report recently, and more than 60% of the attacks that we see on endpoints are not malware related. So I think a lot of people have this concept of you just stop malware and you can stop all breaches, and that's not really true. You have to combine that with understanding the identity of users and making sure, getting back to the point of the panel, that you trust no one and nothing. And that's a big part of what we focused on at CrowdStrike with our zero trust technology. But when you think about a sophisticated attack, like SolarWinds, a lot of it was identity based, and a lot of it could have been stopped or identified earlier, right? Sophisticated attack. So it kind of annoys me when people say, well, they could have stopped everything. Who knows, right? But at the end of the day, I think with a true zero trust architecture to prevent lateral movement, which is one of the areas that we see being abused most, system to system, I think it could have been identified very quickly. And that's part of our architecture. So obviously we've got other technologies and other great companies represented here that plug in and handle things in a complementary manner. But if you can stop identity-based attacks, if you can control users where they want to go and understand who they are, and you combine that with really effective malware prevention and identification on these endpoints and workloads, we think that's a winning combination.
So Jay, why aren't we doing more of that? I mean, what's the issues with the existing legacy models, legacy approach to security? I mean, we know security is not 100%, it's not foolproof. Bad things will happen in any case, but what are the failures of the existing approach to security that hopefully Zero Trust can help with?
Yes, Jim, building upon what George said, our network security architecture is 30 years old. 30 years ago, when IP-based networks started, the notion was if a user gets on the network, he should be able to go anywhere, access any application, which is wonderful. But the problem is in this castle and moat model, where there's trusted network and untrusted network, people are allowed to get on the network, then they move laterally and do bad things. So the notion that inside the moat you're safe, outside you know is broken. It was good 20 years ago. Now applications are all out there, users are all out there. This network security model has to be turned on its head. The architecture needs to change. And that's where the Zero Trust is coming in. Trust no one. Based on identity, based on device posture, based on other attributes, you connect the right user to right application. That's really what has to be done. Inertia is a powerful thing. The world is still kind of sitting with firewalls and VPNs. As long as we're sitting on them, it'll be very hard. It's like you got in the castle. Now you're worried that this person will move from room to room to room, and you try to create a wall here, a wall here, a wall here. Well, the point is, don't let people just come in the castle and wander around. They should be taken to a certain room, the meeting happens, then they get walked out. That's the kind of architecture we need to go to. So it's an architectural change. It's not that we add 2 more features to a firewall or VPN, it gets better. And that's what we are driving. That's the whole foundation of Zero Trust architecture.
So this is obviously an adversarial thing. So the attacks are sophisticated because the attackers are trying to go around the defenses. So that's why it's important that as you said, you're never going to have, you can never rest and be done with security. It's always going to be an evolving thing, which is why it's so important, why I love working with CrowdStrike and Zscaler, because this environment, this adversarial environment, this environment where we're trying to move to this Zero Trust new future requires partnership and integration of the vendors. You're not going to be able to, we love our identity story and our capability, but you're not going to be able to do it all with just identity. It takes great device posture and tools, XDR tools. It takes great networking security tools, what Zscaler is building. It takes an ecosystem. And I think in a lot of approaches have failed to do that. Vendors have thought they could do it all themselves and they could kind of defense everything and they could react to all the evolving threats. And we've thrown that out as a team here and we said, we're going to work together. We're going to have the best integrated solution that's going to protect not only the threats that are in the world today, but as they evolve, we're going to continue to work together to protect the customers.
Can I follow on that? And I'll be brief because I really think that's a great point. When you look at where we are today, and we talked about sort of 30-year history of security and how it's evolved, part of the challenge is you've seen, point products and best of suite solutions. And really, I think where we are today is the best of platform. And what customers want is they want the best of CrowdStrike and Zscaler and Okta, and they want to plug them together like Legos. They don't want to build them. They don't want an army of people to manage them. They want it just to work, and they like the fact that each of our companies are focused on our respective core competencies, and it's really the best of platform that we think is going to win, that I personally think is going to win in the future. So it's really a great point that Todd brought up, and I think that's the current environment today, and that's what we're focused on delivering on.
We are in this age now that we are able to update our software, our services many times a day. And so integration done right, it can be very powerful and very dynamic in security. There was a little bit of definition of zero trust, but I hear a lot from enterprises that want to be educated on this topic. And we talked about, hey, literally it means you can't trust anything. Can someone just add a little bit more to that? So we can't trust things. So then what do we do next? What do we do next in zero trust to get to systems that are usable, that we can have confidence in?
Yeah, I think about it as rules at a very granular level. So it's not just enough to say any device in the network is trusted, any device outside the network's not. You have to know about all the devices. And it's not enough just to know, hey, this computer is always trusted or never trusted. You have to know what users on that computer. So it's this granularity of people and devices and networks that if you can put it together in this integrated policy engine, you can make a granular decision. That's going to lead to the good outcome where if something is compromised, they're not going to be able to go very far because every layer of the stack is going to check and recheck to make sure that they can't do anything that they shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I would say maybe in a simplistic model, think about zero trust, probably comparing it to analogy. In one model, if I go to see someone at the headquarters and I have a meeting in, say, room 22, they stop me at the reception, they check my ID, they give me a badge. And imagine if they said, Jay, just walk down to 22 unescorted. I could wander around, go wherever I feel like and snoop around and may not even go to room 22 and leave. That's what happens when we get on the network and we have lateral movement. Now, in the other analogy, if I come to see you, they stop me at the reception, they check my ID, then say, wait, we're going to escort you to room 22. Your meeting happens. And once the meeting is done, we escort you out. In this example, think of building like the data center, a room like an application. You are only allowed based on certain rules, as Todd said, to access certain applications. You're never on the network. You're not on the computer per se. So it's kind of policy-based access, which starts with identity. That's what Okta does a great job. And identity is no longer simple identity. It's a next conditional advanced access type of stuff. And device posture becomes extremely important and complementary. That's where Zscaler integrates with CrowdStrike. And then we have a bunch of next level rules. For example, which applications can you access? That could be a rule. You can say, look at the traffic and see if there's some malicious stuff going on. Stop it. So based on rules, connecting to a particular application or service, not to the network, becomes fundamental. That's where three of our companies become very complementary to each other. And I have so many examples of that. Take United Airlines, all right? They're working with CrowdStrike, they're working with us, very happy customers, and leveraging integration we have done to minimize the operational overhead and be complementary by sharing threat intelligence that two of our companies figure out and deliver better value to our customers.
So if I could like build on or maybe provide another sort of analogy to that, you have a person whose ID was checked and they are allowed certain access to a certain area, but there's something wrong with them. They've changed, they've encountered financial pressure, and maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have the same access they normally have. How do we think, and this might be, thinking maybe more for George and Todd differently from like, how do you detect someone who's authorized not behaving appropriately? How do you think about that in the zero trust philosophy? And then how do you handle that from an identity perspective?
Jim, the way we look at it is it's sort of this triumvirate, which is the endpoint itself and the posture of that endpoint and the health of the endpoint, right? And do we believe it's a endpoint that we can trust? So we kind of start there, and obviously we've got deep expertise in those areas. And the second piece then is to link that particular device endpoint workload. It's not just a laptop, right? It could be any cloud workload, any ephemeral workload, doesn't really matter, to the identity. And it could be a human identity, it could be a machine identity, but they're linked. So you're linking machine to identity. And then the third piece of that is to really link it to the data. That's the crown jewels. It could be data applications or what have you, but it's really what adversaries are after. And Todd, brought this out in the beginning of the call here, is that we're dealing with adversaries. They're going to change their techniques, and they have operational goals. And whether it's a nation state that might be stealing secret information, or perhaps even IP, or whether it's an e-crime group that is looking to make a lot of money in ransomware or information that's stolen, they have to do fundamentally very similar things. They've got to get into it. They got to come through the network, as Jay would say. He's got to be able to block and mediate that traffic. They have to hit an endpoint. They've got to masquerade as a user. They've got to get to the data or the applications. They've got folks like Okta that are brokering that. So, from our standpoint, we just take this very simplistic view. I mean, it's complicated behind the scenes of endpoints and workloads, their posture, linking to identity, linking to data.
One thing that's interesting about that question, the way I heard it was, there's someone that is doing a job, needs some data or needs an application, and then for some reason they change their behavior and start doing malicious things with that data. That's like level 2 sophistication. I'd say most customers we talk to, they're really at level 1, which is because of the legacy technology and because of the problems in the past with doing a zero trust, very granular approach, that person has access to what they need to do their job and 70 other things. And so level 1 is like, just make sure you narrow down the aperture of what that person can do just day to day to one thing only. That's all they need. That's zero trust, least privileges. And then you still have to deal with the problem of what if they go rogue and start doing something bad with that one thing? How do you detect that? You get into behavioral detection and policies around revoking users and adding users. But a lot of customers are just closing the aperture from that 70 things down to that one thing. And it's not because they don't have access to 70 things. They don't give these users access to 70 things because they're incompetent. It's mostly because the technology is awkward and harder for them to do that. And they don't want to make the user experience, and they don't want to increase friction because the tools aren't great in the past. They've had to do over access to make people get their jobs done and make it easier to be productive. And so now what we have in the modern tools with Okta and CrowdStrike and Zscaler is we can actually have the best of both worlds. You can actually go in and relatively easily make sure that person only has access to that one thing they need and still has a great user experience. It's not a lot of friction. It's not a lot of double checking and triple checking. It's one thing they need. And then if the scenario you talk about comes to fruition, then you can do things like machine learning on behavioral analytics, or just the basics like making sure that thing's provisioned or deprovisioned at the right time. So it's about balancing that ease of use and that friction-free with being productive.
That's correct. So if I may add to what Todd said, Zscaler is sitting in line for policy enforcement because all communication of the user, if they go to SaaS applications or if they go to internal applications, it goes through us. Now we are looking at the kind of traffic that needs to be figured out, right? That's one. The policy enforcement can happen. If something malicious happens, since we're sitting in line, we can shut it down. In addition, we can do some of the behavior analysis that can be done on the traffic flow. This traffic pattern seems suspicious. Being in line, being able to kill that session is a powerful thing. But also many other areas that are fairly simple. For example, an employee left or the group got changed, which is often done, say, in Okta. No, we had done integration with Okta using some protocols called SCIM. As soon as the change gets made in Okta, either for, say, a given group or given employee, we pick up that change in real time, and the policy enforcement can happen. So those are important benefits of us working together to help our customers and reduce the risk.
Well, I want to take that opportunity, thanks very much, and how you three companies have worked together so well is that with your leadership, your support of CrowdStrike, Okta, and Zscaler, we're very happy at Cloud Security Alliance pleased to announce a Zero Trust Advancement Center. And This is a program where we're going to be doing a lot of research, education, training, professional credentialing for zero trust expertise, community outreach, sharing of case studies, and a lot of events, and do all this to build like the most comprehensive repository of zero trust information anywhere in the world. So you can learn more at cloudsecurityalliance.org/ZT. But I want to get back to talking about some of the content and the issues that we're seeing here. And it's not a new concept. So zero trust, I think it's been over 10 years that Forrester had developed this. And you could argue this is very much the Jericho Forum approach, which was 20 or so years ago, in identity being the perimeter in a lot of degrees. And I'm trying to understand, I have personally just seen a resurgence in interest, which I think is related to the pandemic, and you had to uproot people and make them operate virtually. They had to go home and set up their systems, even if they had multi-factor authentication in a home network with teenagers around. But is there some perspective, and I'll start with you, George, on why we didn't get there sooner? Is it because it took for now the technology to be mature, or other factors on why now it seems like it might be possible to do zero trust?
Well, it's a good question. I think there's really two reasons, and they're related. First is the cloud. I don't think any one of the companies represented here could do what they do without the cloud. So you needed that to mature to a level of where it is today. And once you have cloud scale, then you get the speed and the visibility that you need. So when you think about the ability to stop these adversaries, speed is a very important element, and understanding the threats from a massive population. Between all three of us, we have a really good idea of what's happening in the environments and threats, and what's happening in identity and network-based threats, and everything that you might imagine we probably have seen. So it starts with the cloud, it starts with the architecture, and then it really also begins with the fact that we integrate and we take the approach of, we can't do everything. We can't do everything that a customer would want. Security is so broad that we have to specialize, and we have to work with partners like Zscaler and Okta. We've got to plug these systems together. I think that's the key for us. And I know there's many things that I would have liked to have done in my earlier days when I started Foundstone in 99 that I couldn't do today. And it's really the cloud that's made it all possible.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. And it's not only like the vendors building these solutions that benefit from the cloud. Remember, when the pandemic happened, you moved 1 billion people away from their physical networks, from their office network or from the factory network or the data center, and you put them random places at home from a network perspective. And that really broke the inertia. That broke the inertia of, we can really ride the wave of all these rules that have been built around the traditional network and all of the processes that have been codified, assuming that was true. And now it's thrown out the window, and you really had to get granular and say, listen, people are all over the place. We need to manage the network in a cloud sense. You need to manage the endpoints and the identity. And that's why all the things we're talking about are so relevant.
Yeah, I would say the model of legacy network security worked reasonably well when every application sat on the data center and users sat in the office, because you have to extend the network wherever applications are, wherever users are. In today's world, companies are trying to stretch the network to every cloud region if they're to depend upon firewalls, because it's building this model. Or if you got 50,000 users, you are extending your network with VPNs to 50,000 households. The kind of problem it creates is massive. So that's why zero trust is becoming so important. I think I applaud CSA for starting this initiative as a third-party nonprofit body, because the market needs it. The legacy vendors that are getting disrupted are trying to hijack the term. I was reading somewhere it said, we are the best zero trust network security company. Either you're zero trust or you're network security. You aren't the both. In the world of zero trust, you actually decouple application access from network access. Network simply becomes the transport. It's plumbing. You need to connect the right user based on right credentials, right posture of the device to the right application based on policy and rules. I think that's what's needed. So it's wonderful to have this center, spread the word out so customers aren't mistaken and they keep on extending the old security, because if they do, it'll give a false sense of security. And all these compromises that keep on happening will keep on happening more and more. The last comment I'll make is people think about, well, you're compromised. What do they mean by that? They mean that your network is compromised. That means your castle is compromised. In this new model, there's no castle. Network doesn't matter. Each application is a destination. It's like an island. Each user is an island, and it goes through an exchange, a switchboard, connecting the right party to the right party. Every user is untrusted, whether it's your own employee or it's a partner or supplier. They only get access to a certain service or application once they're authenticated properly and once their device posture is checked. I think that's a world we need to get to.
So I wanted to bring in an important player or players into this conversation, and that's the very large tier one cloud providers that I think you all partner with. And I wanted to get some perspective on, and maybe start with Todd, on how you see the major cloud providers' role and how they are doing in helping enable zero trust within their ecosystem, all the tenants, the SaaS companies, all the huge customer base that they have.
Well, I think they're all realizing that the zero trust architecture is important, and it's got to be to different degrees. They all handle a little bit differently, but they're all kind of realizing that it's got to span outside of their own cloud. So it's not good enough to just have zero trust work inside of one cloud, because customers want more than one cloud. That's a trend I've noticed. When I look at the world, though, and I talk to customers, I see a really distinct trend emerging, and that is the last 10 years, the number of technology vendors that companies have has skyrocketed. Not even a big company, a mid-sized company has thousands of them. And that's a good trend. More technology is better. They're getting more value and they're moving their businesses and their strategies forward. That's great. But they need to kind of focus on 5 or 6 or 7 core platforms. George mentioned this earlier when we're kind of this coalition of platforms here. And vendors need to focus on 5 or 6 core platforms. And what I see happening is they're picking a winner in each of these categories. They're picking a main infrastructure cloud. They're picking a main collaboration cloud. They're picking a main endpoint management cloud or a network cloud or a identity cloud with Okta. And we're working really hard, Okta and Zscaler and CrowdStrike, to make sure that, first of all, whether it's your network or endpoint or your identity, it covers everything else. It covers all your devices, all of your networks, all your POPs, all your location, all of your applications, all of your directories, all your databases. So it's comprehensive, and it connects to all the other platforms, whether it's infrastructure cloud from Amazon or Google or Microsoft, whether it's collaboration. So it's this integration and this connectedness. And that's why the 3 of us are going to each be one of these primary clouds in our customers' environments.
Great. I'd love to hear any other perspectives on this. We know they can't do everything.
I will add to say that, each hyperscaler is focused on their cloud, their applications. But it's a multi-cloud world, as Todd said. Customers not only need to go to hyperscalers, they go to 100 SaaS applications. They go to thousands of other internet sites. So when a customer wants its users to be able to access any internet site, any SaaS application, any hyperscaler, partners like us, we actually enable all of that. And this is where our integration becomes powerful, from all the way to endpoint, to identity, to policy engine, to make sure the right party connects to the right party.
Thanks. George, any thoughts on this, major cloud providers?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I want to point out is just how complex these environments are. And when you look at the hyperscalers, they're obviously focused on protecting their users, and they've got their own technology. And some of it is better than others. And I've talked about this in some of my Senate testimony. But when you look at directory services, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, a lot of them are very complicated and not as secure as one would like. And part of what we do is we help people understand what's in that directory. When you think about objects and users and service providers, I mean, it's an unlimited number of combinations that can be out there. And when you think about attacks, and we study the adversaries really closely, we track 170 adversaries across the globe. We can tell you how they operate, what they use in terms of tool sets and tradecraft. Abusing directory services, abusing things like tokens, and trying to bypass identity is a real problem. So I'm pointing that out because we're talking about some of the hyperscalers that are out there and what they want to do. And you know, they're all good, but if you're putting your eggs all in one basket, it could be problematic. And I think, you know, that's where CrowdStrike and Zscaler and Okta can play a role. Yes, you're going to work with the hyperscalers, but they're not going to have the answer to every security need that you would like.
It seems like ever since I've been in the industry, there's always been this claim that security would become a feature, and it's become such a huge industry. It's just incredible. And so I think that's been disproven. So we're getting here close to the end. So I wanted to let you each have a closing and you know, we have a lot of enterprises, a lot of organizations out there that are at different levels of their zero trust journey. I think most of them are not too far along. And so it'd be great a takeaway that you would like those organizations to think about, or some strategic advice, something like that, or just anything else you think would be really important for our community to know about this topic. So Todd, why don't I start with you?
I think it's important to remember the goal. I mean, we're talking about zero trust and defining it. We're talking about security, but the goal is to move your business forward and execute your strategy. And that's going to require technology to be deployed and it to be easy to deploy and to be easy to access. And that's like keeping the main thing. That's what we need to remember. Of course, security is important, and we're talking about a lot of ways to do that. And we're working hard with our partners to accomplish that and push this industry forward, the zero trust concept, which is super valuable. But it's all in the service of the business objective and making technology easy to deploy and making end user experience really, really frictionless and let them get their jobs quickly. That's what we're all about.
Thanks, Todd. Jay, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
Every enterprise is trying to drive digital transformation, which starts with application transformation to the cloud and SaaS, which requires network to change from hub and spoke to direct to cloud or direct to application. That forces the security to change. Our focus is that through our zero trust exchange platform, any user should be able to access any application anywhere without having to worry about getting on the network, turning on VPN, and give them security, fast user experience, remove complexity and cost of all these security point products for network security monitoring and the like. We have over 35% of Fortune 500 companies who have done this journey. It is a journey, and this journey has been done with great partnership with vendors, partners like Okta and CrowdStrike. I think we encourage customers to shake off inertia of traditional dependence upon network security and embrace zero trust.
Thanks very much, Jay. George, I'm going to let you provide the final thoughts.
Well, thanks. Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for your leadership, Jim. I think for me, a great takeaway and a win here would be for customers to understand what it is that we each do and how we work together. Because I get this question all the time: is do you do what Zscaler does or Okta? And the answer is no. You know, when you think about Zscaler and what Jay talked about, it's the network and the applications, right? And it's protecting that highway. When you think about CrowdStrike, it's really, you know, endpoints and workloads and understanding the posture. And, you know, our zero trust is preventing lateral movement, and it's, you know, it's sort of endpoint and machine specific, right? And when you think about Okta, it's, you know, brokering the identities and being that trusted source of identity information, and they all work together. So I think for me, it's, you know, having people understand that you have to assemble these parts together, that they're very complementary. And, you know, it's not just one piece that you need. It's really the architecture that we're talking about. And that's, as you pointed out, that's the beauty of security. It's very dynamic, but it's also very specialized. And that's, you know, my quick rendition of how we work together, just so people have a feel for it.
All right. Thanks, George. Thanks all of you. And there you've heard it, 3 industry leaders who've made some time to give us some of their wisdom and how we're going to assemble this zero trust future. The journey begins now. And again, come to our Zero Trust Advancement Center, get involved. And it's going to be a great journey to provide the education, the solutions, and so we can have a more secure future. So thank you, everyone.